Hello everyone, a big hi to all the November 24 students, and I hope you guys are doing well and studies are going in full swing. Now today's video is an important video where we are going to quickly cover up the 4 core areas that you kind of need to focus on in your last 2 months. Just don't blindly study, focus on these 4 parts consciously, and I'll just share an important pro tip as well at the end. If you can follow that, it will greatly enhance your preparation as well. So getting started, there are 3 main areas to start with. If I focus on, first is your content in terms of coverage, understanding, etc. Second is paper completion, because you want to study everything, you know everything, but it is equally important that how do you prepare and manage in those 3 hours. Third is, now that there are 30 marks of MCQ in every paper, how do you kind of crack MCQs, and should we be worried about MCQs in the first place? Okay, so let us get started. First, the most important part, that is content coverage. In terms of content coverage, I would strongly recommend that whichever subject that you're looking at, try to ensure a much more holistic coverage. Remember the 80-20 principle. You don't need to fully understand and solve and be a master of the entire 100% of the course. Even if 80% of the course is reasonably well done, you are in a very good shape. Don't run behind the number of revisions. Even if you can manage 2 revisions, that should be good enough. 20% of the stuff, which for every student will be some part of a problem, you ensure that you go through it. There is a very high probability that direct questions come in your exam. Leaving it results in a lot of uncertainty and a lot of doubts in your mind, low confidence. Just read it once. You understand it less, that's fine. Try to use your BCom skills of mugging up stuff and proceeding. But for 80% stuff, try to have a reasonably good coverage. For 20%, kind of glance through it in a limited amount of time, dedicate an X amount of time and finish that off rather than leaving it. In terms of understanding, try to focus on one material if required. If you want to see some additional institute material, that is workable. However, don't try to cover every material that you see. Now, this is a time where you consolidate your strengths. Yes, you can work upon your weaknesses, but these are the last 2 months where you kind of build up on your strengths. What is strong should be stronger, and you will kind of work on it. So ensure that you focus on developing first and understanding of what you know well, and don't refer 50 new things for, let us say, your mental satisfaction. Having an understanding should be sufficient. Now, a very important thing that I would want you to do is, while you are studying now, ensure that you at least are preparing for that last 1.5 days, and then for the next 3 hours after that 1.5 days as well. So how do you do that? Well, it very commonly happens, at least in papers like AFM, which are after FR, where you just have 1.5 days and suddenly reality sinks in that you can't cover everything in that 1.5 days. So should we leave 3 topics and cover only 7 topics? That is not a good strategy. Doing all the topics and all the relevant areas of the topics are very helpful. Now, almost every faculty would give you the sums that you should refer that at important questions for your last day revision. You can use that as a supplement. However, remember, it is your battle, your studies, your preparation. So while you are studying now, you are doing that next revision, ensure you carry a unique color highlighter, maybe a red, pink, yellow, whatever. There's one highlighter which you have not used in the past, and use that for marking questions and adjustments in the question. So if you see a new question where you have to fully refer that, you think there's a particular good question in derivatives, you want to fully refer that, mark that question, the question number, just tick that off, so that, and write down LDR or L or whatever that you refer the entire question on the last day, because you found it difficult, you found it important, you found it covering a lot of concepts. Second, there are so many questions, and FR and AFM is loaded with them, where you have big questions, but in one question there's just one new adjustment as apart from an earlier question. Like compound financial instruments, you might have 15-20 different problems. However, in one of the problems there's transaction cost, in one of the problems, let us say, there is a partly convertible debenture. So we want to just focus on that part, transaction cost, in the question, and highlight that part in the solution. So when you're revising, you exactly see on the last day that particular area and that mark in the solution, and trust me, that saves a truckload of time. Even if it saves you a few minutes, few hours, that is at your last 1.5 days, you know, you can kind of cover up mountains in those few hours. So ensure that you do that marking right now, and don't wait for someone sharing a list with you, we will share. Okay, we will share, but again, that is based on our experience. You know where you are struggling, you know what you want to look at. So use our list as a supplement and also make your own independent list. Okay, second is the paper completion part. So a lot of students focus so much on just the content and the understanding part that they lose out on the fact that they just have 3 hours at the end to write the exam, and in those 3 hours you need to play all the 50 overs, and hence it is very important that you develop some part of writing practice, or even writing developing some writing speed. So how do I do that? Well, preferably when you are solving stuff and you see a good question of consolidation, or you see a good question of, let us say, foreign exchange, try to do a few questions on pen and paper. I can understand the time restriction, and it is theoretically possible to do all the sums on pen and paper, practically impossible to do all sums on pen and paper. But not doing any sums and your hand gets rusted, it does not really pick up as fast as it should. Even if you are writing and solving maybe an hour and a half a day while you are revising, you don't have to take a specific dedicated time to write stuff. While you are practicing, keep that pen in your hand, write down stuff so your hand is not rusted. It is in that full flow when you are writing the exam. So writing practice is paramount, and if possible, writing a test. I mean, you can write an institute mock test paper. If you have joined some test series, you can write that, but I personally prefer writing an institute test paper. You can randomly pick it up from the last 2 or 3 attempts and you write it. It is very important that you time yourself and ensure that you don't go overboard when you are writing the solutions. You know a lot of stuff, but well, it has to be time bound. A 5-mark question cannot go for 15 minutes, and hence you get that invaluable feedback while you are preparing, and not as a last day shock or surprise when you're writing the paper. So ensure that you write one paper if possible. Now the revisions that you do, you will have a slightly decent understanding of the subject, and hence if at the end of the subject, if you have a time from 8 to 11, put a timer on and probably write a test on that. It's fine if you get it corrected, self-corrected, corrected by someone, bonus for you. If not, at least that writing practice, trust me, for every paper, it can help you in adding those 5 marks, which can be the difference between, for example, 295 and 300. So ensure that you kind of write in general on a single day, and specifically time yourself and write once, probably for a particular subject. Okay, then comes the problem area of case-based MCQs. Now, for case-based MCQs, there would be question banks probably with you for FR, AFM, or for any subject. Do I need to necessarily do the question bank? If you have time and have done it, well and good. If you have not, there's no problem in that. Should I necessarily refer the ICI BOS MCQs? I would suggest that probably either RTPs or exams or ICI BOS, maybe at least a few of them. If you try to solve, you will get a hang of it. Having said that, MCQ is not something which is entirely different. Having heard the experiences of so many students in the past, we can say with a fair degree of confidence that even if you have not done the MCQ from the ICI, all of them, or from the question banks that you have, it is fine as long as your core content is good. If your core content is faltering, MCQ will falter. If your core content is reasonably good, MCQs generally take care of themselves. So you don't need to panic for the MCQs. Preferably for practice, again, I would strongly suggest maybe taking last 2 RTPs, May and November 24, or maybe taking the May 24 question for FR. You kind of had the MCQs, for others you may not have it. So maybe doing these 4 or 5 MCQs, and I'm telling you, it will not take more than probably 2 to 3 hours. It will develop a massive level of comfort with that fear factor, which is 30% of your course. You don't want MCQs to kind of put you down. They will actually help you cross that exemption line quite easily. You don't want them to put you down. And last is a very important thing, which I personally found it to be very helpful in my preparations. Now, generally, especially if you are giving, let us say, this as your second or maybe a subsequent attempt. For first attempt students also this really helps, but if you're giving a subsequent attempt, a very common thing that is kind of hitting your mind whenever you're studying is, well, I know this sum in and out. I remember the numbers, I remember everything. I don't know where I'm wrong. I think I will do more revisions. Well, you have done reasonably good amount of revisions of the same matter. So where do I get new practice? Well, try to download papers from May 21 to May 24. That is probably around 3 or 4 years, maybe around 6 or 7 attempts. I'm not saying you sit and solve each and everything. You can glance through the papers and solve in rough. So if a full paper with full presentation takes you 3 hours, a paper which you are just reviewing and solving in rough cannot take you more than 1.5 hours. Trust me. So if you are looking at 6 to 8 papers of the institute, after a revision, you need exactly 1 day. Even if you take 1.5 hours per paper, and I assume you study 9 to 10 hours a day, 1.5 hours a paper, which you are just scribbling around. Sir, how does it help? Well, you will see the type of questions that have been asked, the pattern, and most importantly, you will try to practice sums which are similar to your study material, however having different numbers and different names. And time and again you would see that different numbers and different names actually stump you and force you to think, because you know the answers for most of the sums that you have seen in the book. So how do you test, validate whether your understanding is there or not? Whether are you making that small silly mistake? Remember, silly mistake is silly. How will you correct it unless you try a similar question? Now you might have question banks which unlimited amount of sums. You don't have time to do that. I'm saying that after every revision, and this is not additional, this will give you massive confidence before your paper. Just try to download, and if possible we will also share a compilation where you have it at one place on our Telegram channel, but otherwise you try to download and try to have a list of at least around from May 2021 or November 20, let us say, till May 24, it will not be more than 7 or 8 papers at max. You just keep 1 day, jitna hua utna hua. It is not that you have to complete 20 papers, that's fine. You know how the institute is going to ask in the last 4, and that is gold. That knowledge is gold for you, and hearing that versus doing it yourself is a huge amount of difference. And getting those different numbers, different names will force you to think, and then you will find those mistakes. The answers that you are looking for is in the effort that you are avoiding. So if you are avoiding that, you are just referring all of that again and again, which is helpful but probably not aiding or supplementing your understanding. So I would humbly request you to keep just 1 day after your after your core revision, where you spend a few hours. Only 1 day, jitna aap kar sakte ho. Rather than doing 0 papers, it is best if you do 3 papers, 4 papers, 5 papers. Maybe write an exam paper full-fledged, 3 hours if you have that kind of grip. And it's fine. You need not get the entire question paper right. Remember, you need to score 60% and above even to get exemption. So there can be questions where you make some mistakes, but that is to be detected now. Okay, so please promise me that you will do that, and you will give your best, and you will take it through into the next attempt. Please give it your best shot, and we will also keep on sharing revision videos. In any case, there are a lot of revision videos of almost all topics which are there. We will also share a playlist for the same separately, and I'll, if required, put a separate video out also. But ensure that you give your best shot now, give your best preparation. Put it in your comment box that you will clear November 24 and come back after your results to see that what you manifested actually did happen. Okay, give it your best shot. Good luck, goodbye, and keep rocking.